Yum, yum, yum. Okay, good morning, afternoon. You know what kind of day you're having by the size of your coffee cup. Okay, hi everybody. How are you today? In honor of Jim Lujan, I'm listening to Depeche Mode today. But at the same time, I've got some stuff to do. I've had a productive morning. The one-page suggestion that I worked on yesterday, I ended up plotting 3 separate one-page stories from it, which is exciting. But rather than doing it like a 3-page solid piece, I put out the one page that you see on the screen right now. So because the other 2 instances, focal point part 2, focal point part 3. See how it goes? Uh-oh. Oh, really? Yeah, so the whole idea of doing a continuing series is, generally what most people do in comics is that you don't think of a just one-off moment. You think of a string of moments, a series. You think of a story arc. And the challenge of that, of course, is with anything else. If you start working on something and it's not necessarily all that well received, and by that I mean, let's say you've spent so much time working on a project for so long, and then when you release that thing, there's all that anticipation that's built up because you've invested so much time and energy into it. The challenge, of course, is you can't do it for that. You can't do it for the release. You can't do it for the capitulation. You can't do it for the response. You have to do it because you do it. Arguably, the more that you just engage and focus in that, arguably, the more that you're going to put the effort and the love and the craft into it. Because you're not sitting there working for the outcome. You're not working for the expectation or the hope, right? And there's Frank. Hey, Frankly. So this is Frankly's first statement, ladies and gentlemen. Release the Kraken. The best thing to shout for a team to come on the ice in hockey. I'm sorry, it is. Doesn't mean it's a good team. I've never seen them. But anyhow, so you can spend all that time doing this project. And when it comes out, how it's received is going to change your mindset if your value judgment system of what you're producing in your craft is based on primarily other people's responses, right? The more that you are waiting for everybody to go, oh, you're amazing. I love you. Have all my things. I don't know. But the more that you're looking for that, the more that you're hoping for that, the more that you are setting yourself up for disappointment. I think that at a certain point, you have to just be engaged in the craft in and of itself, and those other things will come along. Right? So because of that, you have to invest yourself fully and commit yourself to enjoying the moment and enjoying the opportunity to learn new things and develop as you go along. Enjoy connecting threads from one project to another project that other people might not be initially aware about, and I've done this with a number of different pieces that I've done. I've got characters and backgrounds and I know other people do it too. I think Jim does it, but in fact, I know Jim does it. Frankly's got Captain Goggles and everything. Frankly says something interesting here. He says, the more praises you seek, the more stress you put on yourself. Yeah, that's exactly true. That's exactly true. And good for you for recognizing that too, sir. There's something to be said for just be who you are. Just produce. The people that are out there looking for you, they're going to find you. The people that are out there that have been waiting to see this work, that this is the piece that speaks to them. They're out there. They just haven't seen it yet, right? It's a noble theory. It's just it's just something that if you're conscious of, well, that's good. I mean, you're reminding yourself of a thing, but in truth and honesty, don't even be conscious of that. Just allow yourself to work and do what you can to pursue opportunities as they come, but don't put your entire focus on the reciprocity of the people that are out there on whatever you're doing. That in mind, what do we got? I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up here. I was just recording a video on why I decided to stop doing 100 Days of Making Comics challenge. Extra stress you didn't need, frankly. Good for you. Good for you. There's setting goals and expectations on yourself should be the goals that you and expectations that you set on yourself. So if you're going to set yourself up with something like, I have to make a comics for 100 pages in 100 days or something, well, if you got that time, do it. I don't know. Is it just 100 days of making comics? I'm sorry, is the term. That's great, but 100 days of comics is really loose, if you ask me, because that means whatever you're doing in producing a book. And so rather than focusing on this expectation of production, this expectation of I have to have X amount of things done in that way, just allow it to be organic. It doesn't mean you can't do 100 pages or 100 days of making comics, because I would be surprised if people like you, frankly, you're going to do it anyways. It's just you're not specifically doing some given project. And if this 100 days of making comics thing that you're adhered to, if that's an actual, well, here's the rules you have to follow, poops to that. That's the thing you leave. But you're making stuff anyways. You're a creator. Creators don't turn off the valve even when even they're driving in a car to Sacramento. They're still looking into that world, that creative world. I like that. Okay, so this is yesterday's page. We'll talk about this some more, but let's get through the housekeeping first. This is yesterday's page. The suggestion was, no, you got to read the book. That's how you're getting old. The suggestion was a magic car that crashes into anything that looks like a target. Bullseye, it also says in parentheses. Oh, what is this? Frank's. Hey, how you doing, Philip? Sorry, buddy. 100 days to work on a comic. I do it already. See? You're doing it, Frank. It's not like you have to be in and out of whatever this challenge thing is. You're doing it. So that's challenges for people that don't do it, right? That objectively need some kind of motivation in order to produce. That's the difference, is recognizing that for yourself. Well, I'm kind of already doing that. And if you take a day off, you take a day off, right? But some people need motivation. They need a scheduled set of time, of time to work on something in each specific day, and that's good. That's good. If that works for them, that's fantastic. What do we got here? Frank is drawing villains. How you doing? Want a side profile? Make me a bad boy, Frank. Frankly, make me a bad boy. Don't get me started on that Phil Chandler guy. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot like life. Shut up. That song was just in my head. It's a Depeche Mode quote, folks. Okay. So one of the other things that I want to talk about is part of what our housekeeping is today. And this is what I'm calling housekeeping from now on, if you haven't figured that out. Focal point part 1 as a single page based on the idea of a magic car that crashes or smashes into anything that has a target on it, which is actually a lot more broad than you might consider initially in society. Curling rings, airplanes, target stores, right? Bullseyes. There's so many things. But doing it as a part 1 and doing a single page comic on that, if people associate to that, if people dial in to say this specific page, or there's enough enticement in this that they want to go, well, can we see the rest of the Campaign of Terror? That is a surefire sign to say, well, this needs to be extended. And that's an easy thing, right? But rather than investing any more time than you might necessarily have for the immediacy of the given project that you're on, and in this context, I'm doing a page a day for the 1-page comic suggestions. So I'm not doing 3 pages last night. I'm not, but I have 3 pages laid out for this. But 3 pages is an odd number for a short story. So why not let it sit, see how this first page goes, part 1. If there's any interest that calls out to it, be responsive to that. And in the interim, you might come up with whatever that missing component is to make it 4 pages, whether it's the structure of how you're laying out your pages or whether it's just one more crazy idea, right? So focal point, part 1, right? I'm sorry. Chris, when you get a moment, tell us some interesting facts about London, Ontario. Perhaps we'll just keep driving all the way there. For anyone that doesn't know, Jim and his partner are driving to, wife, yes, are driving 6.5 hours to go and see a concert. And it's simply a snafu of, thought you were buying tickets locally. You ended up buying tickets for the next city over or so forth. And so now you got to go and do that. My wife and I did that one time. We ordered, well, not 6.5 hours, but my wife and I ordered shawarmas. And there's this place that we ordered them from. It was our first time trying it out. Well, they had a chain of them in London. And so the order that we placed, and then we went to that location. No. We sent our order into the one that's on the other side of the city. So we got to go and pick it up there. Rush hour traffic, completely unnecessary, but we've paid for it, so we're going to get there and find out that they gave our food to somebody else. But it's okay. They brought it back. So, yeah, it was an experience, but it was one of those things where you think you're ordering something from there and you're going someplace else, actually. So that's a completely common thing in this day and age, I think. But hey, Sacramento, though, right? If you've got any place to drive to, drive to Sacramento. I'm not sure. But in the meantime, let's talk about London, Ontario. It's not in London, England, as Frankly has informed everybody, which means you can drive there by car. It's a little bit longer than 6.5 hours. What do we got? Killdozer, except with a smart car? Yeah, kind of works like that, right? Kind of works like that. Okay, so this is the page. This is the first one that we've worked out, and I put this together from the switching cameras. This is the page that I drew everything on initially, and so these components are put together into the page, and then everything else is me playing digitally. I'm doing more digital stuff in my work because I'm becoming far more comfortable with everything, and so that's what's happening there. So this is going to go in the pile, and it's fine. I mean, I've got enough material for 2 more pages laid out, and a bunch of drawings done already that I went, you know what, this works better in a different piece. So if I don't know, Big Daddy Warbucks, from Annie, calls me up and says, "Son, I want to publish a whole series of them car books." Yeah, we'll do some more. I've got a couple outstanding 1-page comic suggestions. I forgot to do this, and I'm sorry. What am I missing? Frank. There we go. Frankly, placed an order for maple syrup, but accidentally set it for pickup in Canada. I'll be there to get my syrup. Frankly, nobody orders maple syrup in Canada. Every tree nearby us has it, buddy. That's some rumors I want to start. London, birthplace of IMAX, has no IMAX theater. That's right. That's how we do here. London's also the testing city for most franchises in Canada. So Tim Hortons tests all their stuff out here. A number of restaurants test out. The McDonald's tested pizzas out in London. All kinds of stuff like that. Is there a giant click? I think that means clock. Named Ben in London? No. I know a guy named Ben. He's not giant though. All right. Ontario Place. Yeah, the first one that's Toronto. But yeah, London does that. London is a sort of testing place for all kinds of stuff. But we did have a NIMAX theater for a while. So, okay. So I got a couple suggestions right now standing. But let me do this while we're on this crazy Canadian London conversation. This is the standard, if you have a one-page comic idea that you can put 1 or 2 sentences, put it here in the chat or in the comment section below the video. All right. Okay. Frankly likes Tim Hortons coffee. Okay. So, frankly, he likes Tim Hortons coffee. So this is the page from yesterday. This has been a good week. I'm just going to step back for a second here. Monday is the 4-page piece. A man walks into a bar. I got that all formatted and put together, and there's some fun little bits. Instagram would not let me post the 4 pages, but if you go on Facebook and my Patreon, you'll find them there. If you go on my Patreon, I have made sure every time for this week, I post the original artwork as well on my Patreon. So anybody that subscribes to the Patreon also gets to look at the process as well. So step inside the madness. So this is Tuesdays, Rock and Roll Librarians. Pauline, Dorothy, Marion, and June are 4 of my aunts. Just, older lady names. So then we've got Wednesday's page was Citadel. And this is the page that I did Tuesday night and posted yesterday. This is a big mixed media thing. And again, playing in the Photoshoppy to blend a lot of these elements together. And then last night's page. So what am I missing? There we go. Frank has got a slang book on Canadian dialect. Giver. Good start, Frank. It's interesting how you go with a single color theme for these. It's sometimes there is something to just locking down in a single value, right? Sometimes there's something to that. It allows you to just stop worrying about too many decisions in a short time. That's not to say that we, I don't have color pages, and I don't do 1 pages in color, but there, even this has a root color. So whenever you're doing painting, it's always going to have a root value that you put throughout your composition. And so no matter if I have, a broader range of color in pieces, there's still an underlying color in those, right? And it's just a matter of allowing yourself the exploration of the composition and the story, because this is our primary interest in creating storybooks and comic books is storytelling. So, but that's not to say that, okay, well, let me show this example. Even with an example like this, which is a collage, there's still an underlying value in that, because that's what ties it together. That's what roots it together. And if you open any illustration book, look for that. Look for that. It's one of those things where I don't think we consider it enough. I really don't. I think that once you realize it's there, once you realize it's something to be considering in any of your compositions, eventually it just sort of becomes an underlying thing. It becomes innate. Innate? Yeah. But thank you for asking that, Philip. That's a nice observation. Frank is learning Canadian terms, everybody. So he's going to be saying, there we go. Frank's just on my Chuck Norris page. Chuck Norris hosts a fashion show. Chuck Norris had a fashion clothing line in the 1970s. Look it up. My great aunt likes to relax on the Chesterfield. What do you put your feet up when you're sitting on the Chesterfield, frankly? Do your homework. What do you got? What's a Canadian term for your footrest? It's a bit nippy out today. I need to get a bunny hug. No, that's not how that term works. It gives it a bit of mood, Philip says. Well, you can do a lot with tonal value. in a piece. And when you implement, and I'm talking about grayscale, I'm talking about light and dark, right? But when you implement a color value, then oftentimes color values denote emotional response from the viewer. If we want, I did this piece in blue, largely because my intent on this page is a focus more towards story than it was towards this crazy car crashing into everything. A. B, because I rebrand and remodeled Target stores and the Bullseye stores, their principal color is red. So I can't do red because I don't, I'm not doing Target stores. I'm not suggesting anybody goes and blows up Target stores with a car. So I changed the Bullseye stores to the theme of blue. And I have the recurring blue throughout. But that the calmness of a light blue, because that's the association of that color, is offset by the fact that I don't draw the car in blue. I draw the car in the black and white, because whatever the passivity of life is, and whatever the passivity of society is, the calmness of the world around us, and the car is disrupting that. So therefore, the color of the car is not the passive color. So it's a weird thing. So even when you're associating color, even when you're thinking of something like that, it's a hassock, frankly. Frankly, it hasn't got that far in its Canadian terms. I'm doing 2 conversations now, folks. It's a hassock. Look that one up. Or an ottoman. There's another term for it. We got all kinds of ridiculous things in Canada. Look at the Villa Cobla and Mucklucks. You're going to have fun. Even when you look at a color value from its association of emotion, and there, I'm looking for a color wheel, see if I have one kicking around anywhere in the studio here. I don't have one close. It's in here. Yeah, forget it. When you look at color, there's an emotional association that we generally have with color. If I say green, and what association of emotion is with green, feel free to type that in. I'm just going to leave that one open for a moment. But blue has its association, red has its association. All of those different things that are associated by each value and the emotional sense that we have allows us as creators in our storytelling applications that if we implement those colors, it may go an extra step to associate the emotion in there. But then we can also do the opposite of that, right? Anonymous says green, the emotion for green is Hulk smash. And Philip just threw the Canadian slang gauntlet at Frankly there. Good stuff. Okay, so green is envy. Green is green is envy. Green is disgust, right? There's actually a color intermediate to green and yellow that's more appropriate to disgust. But those envy colors, and we're talking about a light green in this context, because a dark green, which goes more associative towards blue, which has a little more passivity in it, is a sort of, it has a calming effect, and it makes us more associative to nature. It's all kinds of nonsense. Red is energy. Some people say red is love or hate. It's energy, right? So there's, you guys are fine. Ottawa, man. Ottawa, Ottawa. It's probably Siri. Not to derail you. You're not. I got kids. I can do 16 conversations at once. So I got 60,000 children. I don't. The whole idea of associating color value with emotion in your pieces is a strong thing to go to, but doing the contraposition to that. So I'm associating light blue for the compositivity of society, but the drawing itself in the car is not. Therefore, it's decrying the idea of it being a passive page, right? Does that make sense? It's the opposite to the suggestion. Yeah. So we got a couple things laid out for the one page. I put the open option up for anybody again. If you've got a one-page idea, please feel free to do so. I am expecting one from Leanne, who's listening in with somebody today, and looking forward to that. Oh boy! And we've got a couple more standing on right now. I'm going to have to check off yesterday's, but I had Dee Dee on her show on Wednesday pull 3 words out of a bag. This is a fantastic idea, everybody, and I would suggest you go and check out Dee Dee Willingham's stream Monday and Wednesday mornings. She has a bag, and she has written a word on each of these little squares of paper, and there's hundreds of these things in this bag. And if you want 3 prompts in order to do something from, she'll pull 3 words out of that bag. She puts them aside. She doesn't let anybody else get to use those. And so she pulled a prompt for me on Wednesday of kangaroo, airplane, and pyramid. So that's also in the pile for one-page stuff. Another one is cause and effect, is a suggestion. And we've gone through a lot of these at this point. I've got some written back on a previous page. And there's, as always, oh, that's fun, Philip. Yeah, it's watercolor classes, man. I'm sure that if you've been doing any kind of art classes that involve color theory whatsoever, you can spend an entire week on that, right? An entire week on just talking about how color works in conjunction with intent. Hey, everybody, it's Gary Hodges. Everybody say hi, Gary. Frank is free tomorrow. I'll have to let you know, Frank. Frank wants to do a Canadian stream. And I have to get out some back bacon, and get some stubbies there going. That'll be good stuff, bud. So the ongoing idea that I have yet to do is haunted bow tie. That's my favorite one. That's I don't know what to do with. Cause and effect is one of the suggestions. Just making sure I got trapped in an alien ship. Haunted house is done. Leftover whale, or the whales are aliens. Person with water powers, but only the ability to desalinate water. First time we discovered an alien race, they're us. Man, we're just getting through it. So, okay. At this point, we've got cause and effect, or kangaroo, airplane, pyramid. I'm good for either one. If anybody has a preference, let me know. Oh my goodness, Philip, I'm sorry to hear this. I'm not going to post that for everybody under the sun to see, but okay. So we've got 2 choices. One is let me write these down. Kangaroo. Yeah, let's choose the thing that doesn't show up. Orange. Anonymous has said orange tan in a bottle. That's done. That one we did that. That's been posted. Unless you're mentioning that we did that one. And yes, and thank you for that. That was fun. So kangaroo, pyramid. That's the one I keep forgetting. And really? Airplane. I'm having a day. You wake up feeling rough, and it just keeps going that way. But you gotta soldier on, everybody. Yeah, orange tan in a bottle. Let me see if I can find it for you. And I'll put that up. At this point, I don't say this in order to sound ridiculous, but here we go. I found it. I couldn't initially remember what it was. I'm sorry. I don't mean to dismiss it. I just, X amount of pages are coming out here. This is yesterday's page was 66 direct pages that we've done in stream since the start of the year. This is orange, like a fake tan in a bottle. That's the page there. which is, again, a different association of color. But let's talk about that. I forgot my Instagram password. I hear you. Send it to your email. That's what this guy has to do regularly because he forgets things all the time. If my wife is here, I didn't say that. Going back to color for a second again, there's a couple sneaky things that I'm doing in here. There's an underlying orange and red. The red is the outline for the panels, offsets the green, the predominant green, because it's an overpowering green. And then the orange tone that's in the background of a couple of the panels, which is such a strong color, we offset by putting purple on and hiding that in there. So again, color theory works. Look it up. If you're not too familiar with color theory, it's not that challenging. It just takes a bit of sitting down. And if anybody wants to go through, complementary, associated, tertiary colors, whatever kind of different coloring structures you want to talk about, I can spend a stream doing that sometime. If that helps people. Okay. Kangaroo pyramid airplane is the three things for this page. Now, okay, when you first think of three words like kangaroo, pyramid airplane, good gosh. Anyways, when you start thinking about three words like that, what that is going to have go off in your head is some kind of immediate combination of those three elements together. Now, would it be somebody flies on an airplane to pyramid to the pyramids in Egypt to fight a kangaroo? Maybe that's the first one. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I want to get a little action hero here. I'm going to create a character called the Australian Roomer, right? Roo. Yep. And I want this to take place, let's say, on an airplane. And the airplane is on its way to Egypt. So we can associate and put the pyramids in there in that context. But I want this to take place on an airplane. What do we have? Anonymous would do a globe-trotting kangaroo archaeologist. I like that. So this is the thing I keep suggesting, and I'm completely open to this. Anonymous, I'd love to see you do that page. I'm not saying you have to do that page, but I'd love to see you do that page. I like the idea of whatever the one-page suggestion is, whether it's this thing today or whether it's any of the other things, because I tend to try to say what the suggestions are in the text on each post that I put out. I try to remember to do that. So if anybody wants to give there we go, Gary. If anybody wants to take a swing at anything that has already been done as well, I'd love to see them. There's no part of me that's like in any way, shape, or form competitive about ideas. Ideas are in abundance out there. It's just a matter of picking the fruit off the tree, right? Well, here you go. So Anonymous has said a globe-trotting kangaroo archaeologist, and Gary is wondering if it's globe-trotting or globe-hopping. Oh. Yeah, I never even thought. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That gets you guys both get stars. Yeah, stars out in the class. Here we go. Yeah, so there's all kinds of different approaches that we can take to the same stories. There's all kinds of different things that we can consider. Let's look at this notion here. So we've got kangaroo pyramid airplane. I want to do something a little more action oriented, and I wanted to have it. And I like trying to draw the confined space of an airplane. I've drawn enough airplanes in projects, but I have not necessarily, I think, ever drawn the interior of an airplane. And I like challenging myself. So Pyramids. I've drawn a couple pyramids. See yesterday's stream. Okay. Oh, he's rolling the sleeves up, folks. So if we look at the structure of the page, now I've got these stencil things for an old, you put it in the confine of a frame and you roll this around. It makes fun little spirograph patterns. That's what these, I think, are. What's it called? Rotodraw. These are old, but they're right here, so I make sure I keep the camera and the centered on the image, or at least I keep the image in front of the camera. But and I've moved things out of the way so the image stays flat beneath the camera. So ideally, I should stop sliding out of frame. So I apologize for that in advance that I've been doing that. Let me use this piece of paper. So kangaroo airplane. Let's get to it. Kangaroo airplane. Yep. Pyramid. Okay. And I have talked about, can you see that? Yeah, I think so. So I have talked about having a character called the Australian Rumour, because nobody's really sure if this superhero exists. Crikey, did you say that, Bio? Anyways, so I've drawn enough airplanes, but I haven't drawn enough interiors. So my pursuit is to be able to draw something in an airplane. Now, that also has to fit into the fact that if you're going to have a superhero who's named after a kangaroo, he's got a kick, right? So it's a confined fight in a space. So that's two challenges, because I'm not one that does an awful lot of action books, an awful lot of superhero books. So first panel, we want to establish the context. Okay, we want to establish the sort of the scenario itself, right? Yep. Pardon me, folks. My brain is not working 100% today. So we want to establish the scenario. We want to establish context. So in this context, we want to have, here we are, airplane outside, right? Vroom, 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 vroom. So what am I missing? I'm missing stuff. I'm sorry. Sam Jackson kangaroos on a plane. Yeah, that's the sequel. He's going to do an entire. I'd like to see. I really would like to see Samuel Jackson. Did I put this up? I would really like to see, because of the snakes on a plane, I would really like to see Samuel Jackson have a franchise in nonsense, just like the Bruce Willis guy has the Die Hard franchise of nonsense. Starts strong, goes to garbage. But wouldn't it be great if Sam Jackson just came across different animals he had to fight, different airplanes? I think that'd be great. Anonymous says, gotta have boxing gloves. Okay, yeah, we're gonna put that in there. Isn't there an old song called Tie Me Kangaroo Down? There sure is. And on Frankly Mapleton's next stream, he's going to sing it for us live. Sorry, Frank. Frankly, I'm sorry. Okay, anyways, bad airplane. So there's our first panel. But there's one thing for the visual. Put the airplane in the first panel. But we also want to allow ourselves the secondary application. And that secondary application is, we've got the visual, right? And then we've got the textual. And so what this allows us is just by having a static diminishing returns on the plane. That's a good one-page suggestion. So the textual is where we can take a simplistic image, all right, that establishes a context for our narrative. But the textual can allow us to enhance that by saying, a pilot phoning in. So that's a pilot phoning in to the tower about a conflict on flight, whatever, flight number 2, Egypt. So now we've already established the identifiable part of our pyramids. We're gonna be able to put the pyramids in this now, because we've done a simple thing of just saying that the flight is to Egypt itself. So there's our whole context to the external environment. And then the next thing we can do is put in equal size and shape. And then, of course, eventually we talk about color association and being equal size, shape, and equal measure, equal value of color. Doesn't mean that it has to be the same color, but an equal level of value. Some colors push, some colors pull. Look up Hans Hofmann to read up a little bit on that, the push and pull of color. So now we want to have, so there's our first context, okay? And then the second part, because you want to have a transitional movement from one environment to another environment. If that means, get on your bike, Bill, we're going to ride to this place. That's, even though it's one person saying it to another, you don't have to show the whole drive to the other place. You can have them leaving that place and the camera moves and the next shot is the piece of text that you put in there. Get on your bike, we're going to this place. The journey is inconsequential to the fact that they've arrived at whatever they've arrived. But when we're doing visual images and we're doing visual comics, and because they're so static, we can't show that movement, the sense of transitional movement. So what we need to do is do a exterior or the larger context, and then we need to focus. So now we've moved inside plane. What just happened? Something happened? Felt like my computer hiccup for a second there. Okay, so this is inside, right? And so this is the next step we take in order to enhance. All right, I got to take this off because my ears are getting hot. We can take the. Just turning this off for a second. Listen to my Depeche mode after. Okay, so we can take ourselves right into the action by pushing us into the situation already. We're not going to start with, here's the bad guy, here's the good guy, here's the face-off, here's the whole, you want a piece of me? Yeah, I had a piece of you for breakfast this morning. Let's go. I want the rest of it. Whatever nonsensical dialogue or posturing you have in advance, whatever nonsensical posturing or dialogue you have in advance of the conflict becomes inconsequential to setting up the stage, to setting up the actual conflict itself, the action. You can just step right into it. Allowed yourself the ability to expedite the process, but at the same time, that's kinetically going to enhance the scene itself, right? So if instead of having an exterior shot of an outside of a plane talking about a conflict inside, going to the initialization of conflict, you're bouncing around in time. So we just move straight into it. And the way we move straight into it is by having, whoever our prince, just, well, let's go then, fella, really bad at Australian accent, but it goes right into the moment so that we can jump or we can hop or leap. See what I did? Kangaroo references. Come here, right here. Get on your chair. Okay, there you go. Corbin's fine. So we can just step right into that now and have our principal character take a large action. So the larger action would allow us, or maybe the larger action starts here. I'll explain this in a second. If we start the larger action right here and have him giving the old right here, and I'm going to draw this as basically as I can just because we're going to invest in that in 2 seconds on the other side of the paper. So if he kicks here and he knocks the other guy back, okay, there's 2 things that we can do with this. One, by having this information, by having this character in this panel pushing over top of this frame, butting into that frame, it shortens the rhythm of the page. It shortens that moment of the action itself because this is just jet right into it. It's like when Okay, let's swipe. Swipe, I can't remember what it's called. When George Lucas would cut from a scene to a scene in Star Wars, he'll oftentimes have a wipe go across the thing. So we've got the Millennium Falcon. Let's say this, okay? Millennium Falcon has taken off into hyperspace, gone away with the speed of light, and the stars are left. And as the stars are he sort of tones out on those, takes away the bright lights of the stars and fades it. It starts fading it into black, and then Luke runs by in a tauntaun, and as he runs by, it becomes Hoth. It transitions to the Hoth location, or the ice planet location, where he's running by in his space horse. So those that don't know Star Wars. Anyways, so it expedites the movement. So we've got the intensity that we don't lose because the spaceship is flown away. And then that wipe scene of the next character's action, even though it's on a completely different context, it's on a planet, it's a dude riding on a, it carries over the energy from the preceding scene. If a really weird cut shot for that, Millennium Falcon in the space, and then it just cuts over to the other part, like cuts over to an ice planet, and then you see the guy run across. You've diminished that energy for a moment. I see you. Come on. Wants to say hi. Hey, everybody. My name's Corbin. Hey, look at me. Vote for me in the upcoming elections, huh? Hey, Zutalor, Dabernack. Okay. All right. I said a French swear word. I'm going to get demonetized. That only counts if you're monetized. So, okay. So the idea is here, by pushing his body into this frame, we've established this rhythm. Small beat, big head. Okay? When you look at frames, the more small frames that you have, imagine it in the same sense as repeated hits on a snare drum. Tick, tick, like that. The larger panels that you have, bump, 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 as we move across. Because the panels are larger, therefore the pace slows down a little bit. And then, of course, the big panel is boom, right? That's the idea of timing for panels in comics. I'll get more elaborate on that at another time if you want. So by moving into this shot and having him bleed over this panel, but we can also have ourselves in the entirety of the scene rooted, moving behind this panel, as though that this allows us this action to have this floating in behind here, in behind this existing panel. So it's over top of it. So now we're drawn right into the scene, but it looks like our lead character is jumping off of the scene. And if we move this line and push this guy a little bit back and challenge the conventions of this panel and have our bad guy getting kicked out of it, again, this establishes more energy. Now, the other thing that I'm trying to show here is that by having this angle, and the reason that I'm drawing our little stick guys, by having our guy, big leg, big foot, kicky, but because his body is limp and leaning backwards like this, what it's actually doing is a suggestive line. Because our intent is to move the viewer's eye plane, and I have him standing there like he's leaning on the top of the plane going, "Oh, this seems to be the problem, fella," and then next thing he goes, "Well, as I've had it," flying kick to the other guy. But as the other guy's going back, I want your eye, now that we've moved it through these actions here, I want your eye to go back down here again. I want it to. So because of this way, the structural way that we're laying the page out, I'm going to put the title right here to fill in this void that's underneath these two panels. I'm going to put the title in right there, because the consequence of the title isn't necessarily the most important thing we need to establish our page with. Titles can at times have a reveal at the end of a page or a narrative. You can go in the entire piece of a story and understand. And suddenly when you realize the context of the narrative, the context of the story in relationship to the title, well, that might be revealed over the course of the narrative. That might be revealed as we go along. When we get to the punchline, we get to the climax. You know, it's a prime example of this is the last line of Chinatown. I mean, that's a fantastic bow. It's a nice little bow on a film, you know, because the film has its title, and then the last line of that film, without spoiling it, because it's a heck of a film, but the last line of that film just sums it all up. It just takes the established narrative that we've been following through this film, and it just puts a nice little neat tied up bow on it, which is the sense of logic that's established in the film. The way that people's motivations are what they are, the way that people, their moral sense is the way it is, the way that the characters' interaction and the character relationships are defined because of that last line in the film. It might not be that way anyplace else, but that last line of film tells us everything. There's a hanging thread for you to loosen later on in your own time. But Chinatown, it's a wonderful picture. It's a terrible picture. It's an awful film in the sense that the story is not an easy story, but the film is a wonderful film. Sometimes some of the best films tell the worst events and the worst sequence of situations that happen to people, awful stuff along the way. But the conclusion of it has some sense of moral lesson that has to be conveyed, right? So anyways, the context of the story being purely identified through the starting chapter is unnecessary. You can do that any point along the way. Splash pages used to be 2 or 3 pages into a comic back in the day. Splash pages didn't even exist before the 60s. So styles of narrative in books change over time. Okay, so the body moves back this way, right? And as the body moves back this way, it takes us to this panel, and then this remaining course of actions to get us through to the end. But it's which is all. All I remember is Jack's nose. Yep, yeah. It's kind of a fun thing to have your star of a film have to have his nose taped up through the majority of the film. Okay, so we're going to end with the pyramids. I'm not going to get any more elaborate on the structure of the story, but the whole point of the body moving this, because I want to do it as I go. I don't want to be boring. For me as well, right? So the whole point of the body falling back this way is to push the viewer's eye down to here. Okay? Now, if you put the text there, it sells the swing. It sells the directional arc. If you put the text here, people will want to read it right after they read the title. So, no. Those are the weird things you sort of start picking up. Is where to place text and how to make the viewer's eye flow, not just with the visuals, but also with the text. So you want to put the text down here, because this is, if the text is here and the text is here, the title gets read along the way. And he says something up here, and then it moves down to here, right into our actions, right? You know, swat or kick. Let's just say kick, because that's what's going to be. Kick, kerplunk. Okay, so then we move our text down to here when he says, ow. All right. So that's the breakdown of it. So when it comes to doing the visual part of it, well, pick a plane, you know, because we've established how we're going to start this, the visual components of this. We've established our direction of our story. While I don't have a kangaroo in here, even though the suggestion is kangaroo, pyramid, airplane. It's on an airplane. You don't get to see, except for one little panel shot. It's not like it's about a happy airplane whose friend the kangaroo sat on top and they flew over the pyramids. That's, you know, okay, that's great. That's a fine and dandy story in the right context for the right audience. But that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing an Australian themed kangaroo themed superhero, and I'm not a superhero guy, so it's more like a demented person in a kangaroo costume on an airplane, and they're fighting on an airplane as terrorists try to take it over on the way to Egypt, and it's going to end, of course, with them flying over top of the pyramids. Happy days, right? So, with that structure together and with that in mind, then my next magical choice is the same magical choice I'm always faced with. What way am I going to do this today? Is there any medium or any approach that by doing it, what are we at? We got at least 40 minutes to do this. Is there any medium of choice that anybody would prefer that I take a crack at today? If there's any thing I can do that might help. Why do you do it that way? And I'll explain why I do whatever I'm doing that way. Because I don't mind. If you would prefer that I draw it in crayon, Chris, I'll draw it in crayon. You know. Disgraced 70s children entertainer on a plane. You talk about Rolf? I'm not putting Rolf in here. He's a pervert. But that's an Australian disgraced children's entertainer. You know what's really unfortunate for me about Rolf, aside from the fact that Rolf was not necessarily a nice man off camera and did not nice things to people that aren't able to really defend themselves against it. Rolf did this. There's an absolutely beautiful documentary of Rolf sitting down and painting the Queen's portrait. And it's one of the few times in history, because the Queen had a painting done every year in order to sponsor the art. She had a portrait of herself done every year by an artist, and she would handpick the artist, and she would do a sitting for an artist as part of her responsibilities on the crown. Captain Kangaroo is an Australian. And he wasn't disgraced. What are you doing? Captain Kangaroo is a saint. Hey, Jim, catch you later, buddy. Have a great time. Enjoy the show. Say hi and thank you to Leanne. You guys have a good time. Captain Kangaroo is a saint. Last night my wife came home and I was wearing a tan sweater and tan colored pants, and she came home and she went, "That's an outfit, Mr. Green Jeans." Mr. Tan Pants would be more appropriate, but yeah, that's a Captain Kangaroo reference in my household yesterday. That's fun. Yeah, maybe I'll put Captain Kangaroo on the plane. Maybe I'll put some of those guys on the plane. That sounds like fun. All right. Just for the few people that would get that, that's a test for Frankly. Look up who Captain Kangaroo is. There's videos on the U of Tubes. So, all right. Well, I haven't heard anybody say anything about what medium they want me to use today. So I'm just going to get crack-a-lackin' with whatever I pick up here. Hey, you blue pencil, you'll do it. All right. So now that I've made a mess on my desk, so I'm just going to lightly throw some pencils down, and why don't we have some fun with watercolors today? That sounds like a great idea, Chris. All right. Just give me a second. I got something wiggly worm here going on with my figure this out. Yeah, all right. Okay. Good enough. All right. I'm gonna get cracking. What's the does anybody know what the airline is? The Australian airline is called? Because I don't want to call this airplane that. I'm gonna take off my wrist thing so I don't scratch at the paper. If I've already done some modifying of the surface here, I put some tape down. Just for scuzz. Just for scuzz I wants to. And the reason that I do this mad affair of tape dropping on the paper is that sometimes the idea of just working straight up on a paper can be dull. Qantas. Thank you, Anonymous. Thank you, Malcolm. Qantas. Yeah. Thank you both. Put that up for both yes there. Yeah, let's see. Statler and Waldorf said it, and then Deadpool said it. Excellent. Okay, we'll do a big airplane in our frill. Again, bear with me today, folks. I'm not 100%. Are you funny? Are you good? My whole time here, I'm getting smacked on the shoulder by this ridiculous, and what are you gonna do, right? You go sit down, okay? So I'm drawing a torpedo, a sky torpedo. That's what I'm calling it, Corbin. You like that, sky torpedo? And yeah, get this. Racer. All right. So okay, settled. I think. My cat is highly empathic, and when I tend not to feel good, he tends to harass me more. He tends to hassle me because he knows that, hey, fella, you doesn't feel good. So, which is lovely, but at the same time, those tend to be the moments that you don't want to be smacked at with the cat's paws. All right, so I'm just drawing our plane, and we'll put its windows in there along the side or whatever other nonsense there is. Just throwing that in lightly, and then something you can do, especially if you're doing one material over another, is take a rubber eraser and knock down, just lightly go over it. You're not pressing hard, but just lightly go over your pencil drawing, and it will make it diminish on the page, so that when you come in a moment with watercolor over top of it or whatever it is, it's going to mute those lines down. Because sometimes when you're painting one medium over another and you've got those lines in there, you're going to draw them up, right? It's going to make them pop. There you are. Get out of there. All right. So I'll just throw some pigment over that. Qantas. We'll have to call it some kind of variation on that, I guess. Right? So I'm just not overly concerned. Some people would cut out the plane, but because I'm putting it down as lightly as I am, I'm not overly concerned about that. Now I'm going to put a little bit more of a hit over top of this tape. And the reason for that is that there's a diffusion of the color because of the tape, the nature of the tape, and how the two different surfaces absorb the. I've been boxing and squaring off some panels of late, and this one's going to break that convention a little bit, I think. So, all right, so there we've established our external scene, right? Okay, he's settled. And let's see if I can find. Yeah, there's some silly cowboys. That's from whatever I was doing recently. My giant cup in the way. That's telling me all about cowboys. There's a lot of pictures of Australian fellas with no shirts on. There we go. It's the picture that I'm using, that I'm going to refer to. He's not actually dressed as a conventional cowboy. I don't know if you can see that in the image now. He's not actually dressed as your conventional cowboy. because our resource images that we use, you're not drawing those things. And even if you are, you're drawing them in your style, but you're not necessarily drawing those things. It's just a reference for you to have some kind of, I don't know, little step into the idea. That's all it really is, right? So we'll put his hat on him, and then just get that facial structure in there. His nose in there, right? And then, of course, the way to sell this as your Australian character is, through dialect, right? Through pronunciation and slang. There's things that are said by the English that there aren't necessarily said by Americans. There's things that are said by Australians that aren't necessarily said by either of those two. And so even though all three of those languages are variations on the English language, they still have their own slang terms and dialects. And like an Australian, that tends to be I'm going to head out to the store. There's an upturn end of a sentence, so it almost sounds like a question, right? When Americans say, I went to the store, and there's no turn to that at all. Even if it's, the typified accent from different places like New York, Boston, right? There's still, if you're going to go to the store, there's still, it's still a downturn or no turn at all. It's still a flat expression. Whereas in other parts where they're still speaking English, in other parts of the world, they're going to have all kinds of different ways of pronouncing things. That's why it's always interesting to hear people that have English as a second language, because they're going to bring the phrasing structure of their principal language along to it. And you get some fantastically interesting ways of pronouncing things that you might not necessarily have considered, because this Nordic person is going to say it. And because their language, their initial language that they started speaking in has such differences from English, it's going to have those different inflections and different phrasing, all kinds of fun stuff. That's the sort of stuff that I think about as I'm writing, right? There's all kinds of little things that you can make up for one or the other in the process of storytelling with words and pictures. Is that if you say something, all right, it was 3:23 in the afternoon, you don't need to draw a clock on the wall that has 3:23 on the face of it. You just don't. You've said it, all right? And if you've drawn it, you don't need to say it. Right? It's an out. We draw an airplane, but what we're not saying is it's flight such and such on its way to Egypt. We haven't identifiably said that. It's just an airplane moving through the clouds. So that's the sort of thing that you want to try to explore and evaluate. Like, you can have your pictures running one course of action, while the text of the piece is going a completely different different direction. It's a different course of action. I've got a page from my last book, one-page comic extravaganza, the last book I put out. That's not the last book I've done, but there's a page in that. It's about a car flying over a cliff. It's a car crash, and the car crash is one identifiable arc of the story. It says, today's not going as I intended. So here's the car crash. And the only connection of the text and the image is in the most random panel on the page. And that random panel is, I feel as though someone's out to get me. So here he is crashing. And sometimes when people go through physical actions, actual events, they get flashes of random things in front of them, just flashes in their eyes as they're rolling over in a car. There's all kinds of reported evidence in this, that this sort of strange notions and things that go through people's minds when they're in a tumultuous event while it's happening. So in this context, as he's going through this car accident, he thinks of these little devils for whatever reason. And it just happens to work along with, I feel as though someone's out to get me, which is contextually what devils are supposed to be. So the story is about cheering himself up, picking himself up. And, the day's been tough, let's get going. But the visuals are chaos. And so by the end, as the car is careening over the side of a cliff, the text just talked himself up to say, smooth sailing then, in a really optimistic way. But the image is this burning car flying over the side of a cliff. So you can do that. You can have alternate directions in your story visually and textually. You can have, a sort of discordance in what's happening in A as opposed to what's happening in B, but it's tricky to do. It's something that when you do that, you really have to sort of pay attention to it and have it mean something, have some necessity for it. So that's the trick. So I'm just drawing our Australian cow type here, and getting the old hand up, and he's going to be saying some sort of Australian, strength, mate. I guess I'm going to have to do what I'm going to have to do, or whatever he's going to say. So as I'm drawing him in, and I'm recognizing that in my initial plan, right, as I've laid out this page, where I've got his hand right now, the head is going to cut into that. So that course of action is going to move straight through. Right? So it's even as you're doing the execution part, even as you're doing the drawing itself, you just want to sort of pay attention to those things and watch for those things as you go. Now I've got his eyes concealed under the brow of the hat. Give a little bit of mysteriousness to our guy, but then I'm going to do this, and this isn't work because I'm ridiculous. I'm going to give him kangaroo ears. Let's see, look up a picture of a kangaroo here. All right, marsupial ears, eh? Kangaroos are marsupials? Did I know that already? I think I might have suspected that already, or maybe I picked it up somewhere. This is some big mice, man. So there's this kangaroo ears. There's this whole themed superhero outfit. That's it. It doesn't have to be any more elaborate than that. So I'll finish doing this part, and then laying this in here, and then I'll put a tone to this. It's going to be a different value than the sky value. I'm going to do this page with substantially more color than I did the last one, just to sort of push that a base color, a theme color through a page doesn't mean it has to be tied into a singular page, but it does help you with your storytelling to not make things necessarily overcomplicated. The most ornate comic pages in multiple genres, the more and more ornate they are, the more and more many of the people that are engaging in it are looking less at the story and looking more at the visual, which is fine. You can give them What do you call that? A duster? I'm giving him a duster. I think that's what the big, just going to draw the whole bit in. And then I'll draw the guy in down below so I can give myself more measure to it, because these pages, because I scanned them and put them in the computer, the original images don't necessarily have to be specifically laid out as comic pages. I can do, a stream or so on that specifically, where I show you how to block out a physical page and stick to that physical page as panels, and try to do some interesting things with that for some interesting reasons. But let me know if people are interested in seeing that, and I'll do a talk about that at some point. If there's ever any questions that anybody has, Chris, what's the matter with you? Let me know, and I'll try to figure out some stuff together. Like, say I'm on a train and I'm traveling at 60 miles an hour. Not those kinds of questions. You know what I mean. You know what I mean, Vern? So, yeah, again, I apologize. I'm feeling rough today. We're going to stick to an hour and a half on the outside. We got about 15 minutes more still, though. So here is this panel, as I've explained about it earlier. So we've got him in a moving action, right? He's on a pitch of an angle. He's got his hand up, so the direction of his body direction is in movement. It's in transition. So as this plane, and I might very well change the direction of the plane in order to enhance and manipulate the viewer's eye a little bit more. But this is what we've got going here through this panel. And then, of course, it moves right here. And this is why I have this rough round line here. It's going to move into our super dude doing his superhero kick. So, and I'll rough this out for you. I'll show you roughly what it's going to be. Now, my big pencils. The value for this second panel, by the way, is going to be an ultramarine blue purple, really light wash. So in the original, it's not in camera, I apologize. In the original rough sketch for this, I've shown you that this action to this action to this action. So I want to continue that physical movement, that physical engagement. And we're going to have our guy. We're going to have his. So we'll have his upper body. Nice on camera. Yeah. It'll tilt. And then as his leg comes up, and he's going to kick. And again, this is going to be over here. And he's going to kick this Bruce in the face. All right. And then, of course, his hip is going to drop back. And there we go. And then this leg will move forward and be in a countering balance to the leg that's moving up. So as this leg is coming up, boop, this leg in itself like so. And then, yeah, we can, I drew him with no gloves on, but maybe that can be the next part, right? As he puts the gloves on, or maybe I'll just leave that part out. Or what I could also do is this: have a rope over his shoulder, a string over his shoulder. Let's make it a corded rope. Okay, and then we'll have this here, because what that is to have a little bit of movement, which pushes the dynamic tension of the image. And then if we put this hand here, again, these limbs are trying to capture the balance of this movement here. But then we can have big old boxing gloves. I put boxing gloves in a panel recently, in a page recently. I don't know which one that was. But there's, we'll have these big old boxing gloves hanging around his neck. And just free flapping dapping in the wind. And we'll have the second one. Have that scooped up from behind. Here's the wrist for that, and then we'll have the thumb on the outside. Okay, so, and then his arm will go in front, and et cetera, and then you fill in the rest of this movement, this form, yada, 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 right? And of course, our guy, and I'll put roughly pencil this in before we're done today. And so the guy that's getting kicked, you want reaction to the movement that's here. So in the sketch, I had him falling back. Now, if I have him looking at the viewer, I can have him doing a ridiculous expression like, you know, and that sort of adds a little bit of impact to the fact he's getting kicked in the face. It's because we as the viewer can see this thing happening, and it sort of ties you into that action in and of itself. And then we have his upper body moving back, and now we can have his one leg giving out from under him, you know, and his secondary leg kicking out freely this way. So, and then maybe even have him dropping our rifle, right? What kind of gun's it going to be, Chris? Gun. I don't know. Let me just look up a picture of the gun. But if I put his hand open and that the rifle's now free falling, that gives it a little bit more, again, action and impact, right? All the little things that we can do to make it, things be moving around in space. And, you know, I like the idea of foreshortening this arm and having this hand, right? So there's the sort of breakdown of this. And as far as it goes for the rest of the page, you know, it really is a case of fitting in a couple of elements. And those couple of elements are, I want to identifiably establish our you know, the, I don't remember what I call him, the Australian Ruma superhero character. I want to do a little bit more allusion to that. You know, I want to make sure that he's got a clearly identified connection to Australia, not just the crazy kangaroo hat and nonsense. And then I want to make sure that, you know, and you can make choices at this point too. Like, who's the guy he's beating up on the airplane? You know, well, it would be this terrorist or that, or you know, this, you know, kidnapper, or maybe it's an FBI guy. Whatever it is, I want to keep it sort of open and not have it, you know, be something. There's too much definition of everything today. Everything has to be opaque and defined. And then if somebody doesn't like it, they're going to have some kind of rip-roaring controversy with you about the fact that you've used, you know, the Taliban because they're using a stereotype. Or, you know, well, okay, I don't have to go through stereotypes with you. I'm sure that whoever's watching this understands stereotypes. But it's a challenge in order to tell an open-ended story, an open-minded story, by not having, you want to have diversity, and you want to have all kind of broad assessment of society in your pages, but you don't want to put everybody down into a generic stereotype, because if anything, it puts a logic break in your story. If it's really dogmatic and really preachy, and you know, and one of these ham-hot girl power moments that doesn't necessarily make sense about being, you know, empowered woman, but because a lot of things and memes in society are just sort of making broad statements, you know, it's like the idea of in America, are you Republican or are you Democrat? Do you have to be one or the other? I mean, are you Larry or whoever think is going to do the best job of representing you? So yeah, so I'm going to do what I can to sort of a general, this is an individual on the plane. It's not any kind of tokenism. And because it can be demonstrative too, right? That's the principal thing I'm trying to get to, is that I don't want that. So, and I'll soften these pencils down, rubber eraser, like I showed you, and I'll watercolor at this. But I think what I'm going to do before that, is go have a nap because I don't feel great. But I think I got to rest up. Tomorrow I'll be back at 2. And I'll post this page up before I come out and do something. If there's any one-page suggestions that anybody has, please feel free to put it in the comments for this video, or to put it in the comments in any of the social media stuff. Anonymous, you have all kinds of great ideas. You've got to have some fun one. By all means, feel free to do that. Malcolm, you had some fun ideas too. So I think that both of you have been in the last 2 comments or so. Yeah, anybody that tunes in, feel free to do so. I'm about to click the camera off, so don't put it in the chat because it'll get lost. I've had that happen a couple times now, where people put suggestions in at the very end of the chat, but the chat ends. And what would say? And I got to try to remember it as the screen is turning off and turning to the next open screen. So, yeah, put it in the comments for the video itself as soon as it posts on YouTube, or put the comments on one of the social media things for your suggestions or your one-page ideas. If anybody's working on any one-page ideas, let me know. If you're comfortable with sending the image to me, and that it's something is all ages acceptable. Yeah. I send pages that are like, I can't. What is this? If you're comfortable with me showing those to people through the stream here, I'll do that. And let's try to promote everybody that's out there in happy world. So, anyways, this has been a lot of fun today. Think about the stuff I talked about at the beginning about exploring an idea in a short burst. And if there's a fair response to that, or if you're feeling really comfortable with continuing it, then look at the larger projects. I think you'll find that you're able to execute a lot more things along the way than I'm just going to do a 200-page book and start a project like that. Ow. That's a lot. That's a lot to start out with. So, yeah, consider those things. In the meantime, I hope everybody out there keeps creating. I really like to see it, so feel free to send it. All the contact stuff is in the text below the videos, by the way. In the meantime, have a good day. I'll be back at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Bye for now.